Tack så mycket. Jag vill absolut föredra att göra det på engelska, men välkommen hit. Happy to see that many smiling faces between now and the lunch break. I know this is going to be a hard one, because in 20 minutes you will have fika, and that's probably also going to be very interesting. But first of all, the intention was to share with you some of our ideas in managing an ever complex and increasing security environment, especially from a policy perspective. But definitely it's not going to be a full-blown technical demo. It's going to be way more like an inspirational session with a few thoughts and ideas from our side, from having done this for quite some years. And I won't speak much about AlgoSec itself, besides just to the end what we can do to help managing this complex IT security environment. First of all, myself, Mikkel. I am leading the AlgoSec team in the Nordics, having been there for a few years, also having previously been working with Checkpoint and plenty of other IT companies throughout the last 20 years. So that's my brief history. And to make it very simple, I made just a few topics for the agenda, so you guys have a chance of seeing what we're doing over the next 20 minutes. But first of all, it's going to be something about managing the balancing act of an ever complex and increasing IT security environment. And especially adding to that all the new cloud services coming up, being shadow IT, or let's say services that not necessarily are being managed by the IT teams, but something that just eventually happens. Managing this and staying in control is something that we are working with quite intensively with our customers, and I will share with you a few stories from out there after having done this for 14, 15 years in the global industry of IT security. Yes, you have, let's say, two different roads to follow. Either you're the profile of the very permissive organization, where you basically allow tons of things to happen. You know, business often expect things to happen fast and not let IT security be the roadblock. So you might be a profile that is actually having quite permissive rules, in this case in your firewalls. It introduces lots of risk, obviously, but on the other hand, being the different kind of profile, the different kind of companies having the more tight and, let's say, the rules where you prevent business from happening, or at least it takes a while to introduce new services. We see customers on both sides, not said that one is more correct than the other, but just the fact that if you could balance between those two, it might be more interesting. Obviously from a business perspective, because business is somewhat what is driving. But we do see customers having such tight rules and strict security regime that changes or openings to firewalls may take 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and have significant cost involved by doing so. And this is what can actually be dealt with in a smart way. There are a few points that I would like to share with you where we can probably better align business with the security and vice versa. And 4 steps. Step number 1, pretty obvious, but somehow it needs to be taken into consideration every time we speak with our customers, that your security plan and the business strategy needs to be aligned. It's pretty obvious, but I must admit that usually it's not always the case. When I go and speak with enterprise customers, I usually ask them, what are the CIO or the management requirements for you to deliver in the security organization? And then it becomes very big words about that we need to change faster, we need to digitalize, we need to do all kinds of top-level things, we need to go to the cloud, we need to embrace new technologies. And then security just said, yeah, well, that's good. We're going to do that in years because it will take some time. So this needs to be aligned. It's obvious, but it's an interesting takeaway. Secondly, the different languages or the different teams in the organization needs to be aligned as well. And this goes for specifically communication, because most likely in your organizations, just as well as the many that we speak to on a daily basis, the guys managing the business or the applications, the things that the company lives from doing, are not necessarily into port openings and routing tables and what kind of things do you do in the network team and in the security team. They just want things to happen tomorrow, and I need a new service to be launched ASAP. So somehow you need to be able to translate the requirements from the business owners all the way through to needed openings and things to be done in the network teams. Sounds pretty obvious, but it's usually quite a long process. The bigger and more complex your organization, the worse it becomes, obviously. We believe very much in automation. And from this morning's presentation, I heard that the human factor is critical, and in this case it is. Because as long as you have a chance of replacing a human person's job or a task with a system, do it. Because you can speed up things, you can avoid making errors, and you can actually pull out reports based on that. It's usually not the case if you have a variety of people working with security changes. That is mostly up here, and if this person quits after 10 years of managing your IT security, then there might be an issue. So automation generally is something that we recommend very much. Finally, and I'm sure that there will be lots of vendors giving you solutions whenever an attack strikes you, because it will strike. It's just a question of how to deal with this. And what we try to say here is that you need to deal with this in a business context. So you need to be able to identify where do you need to shut down your business. Which server, which application, which firewall do you need to pull out to prevent the damage from being larger than just being attacked in the first place. Luckily, it can actually be done. I don't like the colors, but they were better before I sent the presentation. Anyway, this is what we've been doing for quite some years. I'm going to get back to it just in a minute. But luckily, this can actually be dealt with. This is what AlgoSec have been doing for 14 years all over the globe, including 10 years in Sweden, in the Nordics market as well, taking care of the alignment between security and business. And adding to that, cloud security and services put up there. You probably know that this is moving fast, and we better be ready because it will happen. And there are plenty of statistics. I just took out one recent survey made of Gartner last year in December, that in a few years' time, more will happen up here than in your on-prem data center. More compute power is sold or available. And what strikes me as the funny part here, because this is quite obvious information, is the fact that this happens despite you sanction this from your IT networking perspective or not. This is going to happen. And eventually we see clients and bigger customers that have hundreds and hundreds of Amazon accounts, Azure accounts for services that their organization is pulling up without informing anyone in the organization. And how can you be in control if you got 250 Amazon accounts where you have all kinds of services running for testing, for deployment, even for live services? Then you're pretty far from being in control. So somehow cloud is adding to the equation of complexity, and this needs to be dealt with. Oh, what a shame, this is not looking too good. Anyway, this was very nice text prior to this, but anyway, look at this nice illustration then. It's quite interesting, because what happens is in the cloud world, you will have a massive of different services up there. It's going to be a jungle of assets. You probably have no idea what's up there. You probably have an idea, and even though you might be, let's say, a financial institution that tells me we are never going to go cloud. Just wait and see. Ask the newly appointed CIOs for the biggest banks all over Europe. The first word in their strategy is we're going to go cloud. We're going to go all in. Even though that banks are probably the last to go, but they are going to go all in. And this needs to be under control. And they need to take all the benefits, because what happens usually is that it's going to be a management decision. We're going to go down this direction. IT security network is being asked to do it. So security is not even a theme. Cloud is something different. It's about agility, being able to launch services faster. And security, even though it's very small letters, is going to be an afterthought, something that just needs to be dealt with. It's good fun. It's pretty complex. And you need to manage not only cloud, but you need to manage this wonderful hybrid network of you're having your on-prem, you're having your cloud services. You might even have different cloud services like Amazon, Azure, and other players out there. We've got clients having several cloud vendors because they want to swap depending on today's rates. and this needs to be managed as well. That's going to be good fun, and it probably takes some preparation. Some of the main challenges we see in this hybrid environment is a few things. 3 things at least: transparency or visibility, compliance, change management. Compliance. If you are in an industry that have got regulations for compliance, if you're a financial institution, if you are a governmental institution, infrastructure provider, you need to be able to pull out compliance for everything related to your firewall, to your security level, basically twice a year on request. Not necessarily something that an auditor can come doing, but it needs to be on request, basically off the shelf. This is pretty challenging when you might not only have one on-prem network anymore, but you also have the cloud environment, and you might also introduce SDN and other kinds of networks, increasing the complexity significantly. So compliance is driving a lot of requirements for tools to manage this. Basically, all the primary banks are using our suite of products to basically do compliance, because that's number one issue. Secondly, transparency. You need to be in control. You, as an IT professional, need to understand what is happening within your IT environment, and if you lack the uniform transparency across the networks, then it will be a funny day at the office. And finally, change management. Imagine if you have only, let's say, 2 or 3 firewalls, you can easily manage, you can easily change manage. But if you've got 150 split in several different networks, and even lots of security groups in the cloud and so forth, depending on single people who can actually do this and have competencies doing this, it will be challenging as well. So here we believe that tools or solution software can actually manage all of this across network, across vendors. And then I actually stole a slide, don't tell. It was a slide just being made from Gartner. It was actually, somehow it disappeared. It was on the first page, if you saw that. Anyway, what it tells you is that in the old days, which is now, and prior to this, it was more like a bottom-up process looking at IT security. It was very much looked into from, let's say, a hardware, network, OS perspective, very much asset-centric, being able to lock down networks, and this obviously is very, very efficient, and it still needs to be done. But moving into cloud services, going into the direction of managing your business from a business perspective, not from a technical perspective, one needs to consider different aspects. And luckily enough, in the morning we had a great presentation about the importance of people. That's probably why Gartner put it on top. People, processes, the critical processes, the applications which are basically running the business, whether you're a bank or you're a production company. These things seems to be in the future extremely more important, managing IT security. So somehow IT security will become more like a top-down process based on what your business is doing. In this case, we can speak about business-driven security and not technical-driven security. Both are needed, but both need to be dealt with going forward. Our founder and CEO is very proud of this, by the way, because a few years back they invented a new payoff, which is business-driven securities. That's a different story. This is what we are doing as a vendor in this industry, managing IT security. We are trying to give you, as our customers, our clients out there, transparency within your on-prem network, with your data centers, with your new SDN, whether it's ACI or something else, within your cloud networks, and be able to give you exactly what you might have had in the past in just your on-prem data center. So basically giving you a transparent single pane of glass for all the variety of networks you have, being able to pull out and do reporting, being able to get automatic provisioning of changes to this network, changes in firewall openings, being able to control this in a business context. We are actually able to make a mapping between the applications, the business applications in this entire network, all the way down to each and every firewall opening. So you can see there is a mapping between an opening and an application. And if there is no mapping, you can consider whether you should have this opening. That's an interesting question. From, let's say, that doesn't look good. But anyway, it's like a 3-tier thing. We have been doing, let's say, the bottom-up process, analyzing networks, traditional networks for years, where we can pull out all kinds of analysis, reports, compliance check with PCI or other industry standards, your own standards, by the way. It doesn't really look that good. Anyway. But then we have the top-down process, where you look at things from a different perspective. You look at things from a business perspective, where you actually have an application starting point of view, looking at whatever goes on from an application owner's perspective all the way through to your network. So whenever an application owner is making a change or request for a change, you can see the impact translated into networking language and creating the automated process all through the way. So basically, if you're an owner of an ERP application, you want to make any change, you can just basically enter the change. It will be translated. If it's within your if it's within your policy, it can basically be auto-provisioned into your Cisco firewall, a Palo Alto firewall, an Azure cloud service. You don't have to touch it. You define your policies, and then you let the tools do the job for you. Final slide. This is not a product. These are some of the capabilities that we have, and we discussed some of them, so I'm not going to spend lots of time here. But basically what many are doing is doing policy optimization, cleaning up what you have already, pulling out all kinds of reporting, compliance check, and latest but not the least, looking at things from an application perspective, being able to look at this from a top-down perspective, analyzing, picking up information about all application servers in your organization, in your network, related to your underlying IT security infrastructure. And being able to do this in, let's say, in a hybrid environment, not only on your on-prem data center, but generally including the SDNs and the clouds and this ever-increasing complexity of managing IT security. So 20 minutes are done. And is there any comments, any questions?
We can begin with an applause.
We can do. We do have a tiny little
we have
booth.
time for some questions.
We have a tiny little booth out there where we can also have a chat if you like. This can also be tried out in real life, of course, but come out and have a chat. You're mostly welcome.
I have a short question. We were talking with Gemalto, we were talking GDPR here before, and you were speaking about checking compliance with your tool. How do you feel about the GDPR scenario?
Well, that's a brilliant question, and basically all customers are asking about this. So the aspects of GDPR which are related to the IT security in, let's say, a policy firewall context can definitely be entered and be pulled out on the fly. So you can build your GDPR reports out of this. It will not solve all the issues about GDPR, but it's part of it.